So again, where do you see that as having started?
Big question. I, I suspect, and I've talked to so many Americans about this, including old, people who are in their 70s who talk about it being different when they were growing up. And I think at least a big impetus for it was World War II, when America really stepped onto the world stage and took a leadership role as a superpower. And that kind of superpower energy seeped through the culture, where Americans felt if you live in a superpower, you have to be a super person. Yeah. And then economic issues. I mean, definitely one of the impeti for the consumerism was driven by the need to not be communist, right? So again, today, when we see things like the health debate, our national health, certain people scream that we're becoming a socialist country, as if that meant it was communist or undemocratic or somehow un-American.
Mm-hmm.
So that a lot of what I see in the culture today was a reaction to not being communist, to identify America as the opposite end of the scale. Yeah, and so when I look at socialist countries like Australia, which by the way we don't call socialist, to me the other advanced countries have blended capitalism with communism in the sense that they look after the people. Yeah, there's a great contract, a social contract that says no one's going to starve, no one's going to be homeless. The rich will help the poor to have at least a basic standard of living.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's, screw you, Jack, I'm all right. It's kind of like the wonderful Newt Gingrich and Jesse Jackson were on a panel, and Newt Gingrich said the poor should pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and without hesitation, Jesse said, what if they don't have boots? And to me, they just exemplified not only the ignorance and stupidity of the Newt Gingrich class, who've never known hunger, never known poverty, never known what it was like to have to struggle, and Jesse Jackson, who sees that existence on the streets every day.
Right.
Yeah. So in Australia, for example, there is national health. There are these social concerns. They're not here very much, a tiny bit. So again, it's thrown back on you that you have to succeed. And how is a woman taught to succeed in this country? Look as beautiful as she can, because then she'll get the richer husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been told this again by so many Americans, men and women, that men got brought up to have a good education, a good job, make lots of money, and you'll get a prettier wife. And women are taught the complementary side of that, be as pretty as you can to get the richer husband. Oh my God, that's consumerism. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're buying partners off the shelf for their packaging. Mm-hmm. So a lot of relationships, and again, you're absolutely right. In a country of 300 million people, you've got a lot of variety. I'm talking about the predominant white set culture,
yep.
The one that gets propagandized and propagandized through the media, through politicians, through so many different directions.
And this is the other night when I was trying to explain to you what normalization theory is. You said it right then yourself. White, middle class America is what's normalized in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And so it begins to define or begins to give shape to what is considered the American paradigm.
Yes.
Which, of course, like you said, doesn't fit so many situations.
Yes.
But it does shape the culture in a way where its disease or its ailments seem to touch a wide variety of
Absolutely.
people. So it's clear that this culture of consumption, of consumerism, I think that your insight about the United States as a whole in creating its own ideology, and I would argue that part of it comes from it being a young country and having to having to sort of define what does it mean to be American, has operated in so many ways from the inception of this place as a country, has been a reactive kind of energy.
Oh, totally.
So it's a reaction to England, you know, the revolution. It's a reaction to communism, the Cold War, that whole thing. It's all about trying to define itself in opposition to something else.
Absolutely.
Which is negating a whole wealth of wisdom about how one or many can be.
Yes.
So clearly it touches lots of different aspects of life.
Yes, I would suggest every aspect.
And you're perhaps right. Yeah. To bring it back to body image, and how can we take that information? How can we take the knowledge of being and existing within this consumerist culture and make it work for us as we, and I'm speaking more about myself than anybody else, although I would argue that lots of people experience issues with body. How can we take that and apply it to our lives so that there's a hope for liberation from this uber judgment, from this constant attempt at you know, whatever it is, skinniness, a more muscled this or that, basically a lack of acceptance for what a person is, and reaching in and finding greater value in those things that are not so tenuous as our physical condition.
Exactly. And again, I'll reiterate, that's part of the, as I say, part of the disease of such strident consumerism is that you are taught to see yourself as a marketable object.
It's so true.
Not as a human being of value and quality, whether you're fat, tall, skinny, with or without acne. Yeah.
Old, young, black,
whatever it is. Add all the other discriminations in the best sense, or distinctions. You're a marketable product. Yeah. That's the crime. To me, that's the crime of strident consumerism. Hence I say this is a very tough country for humans being. And you're absolutely right. Oh, one more point is that you're taught that that's value. You're taught to get value through externals, through appearances. Now, whether that's a fancy car or a pretty face, it doesn't really matter. It's about your value is in your marketing, in your presentation. What you deliver once the packaging comes off the product is very secondary in importance as a cultural thing. Now, obviously, as individuals who value their own quality and quality of life and grow that and value that in others, and I've met lots of Americans who do that. But the culture isn't saying that. Yeah? This culture doesn't value integrity. I mean, I've lost count of how many Americans who I've said, why do Americans like Australians? And without hesitation they say, because they're the real deal, they're authentic. There's no BS. Okay, cool. Yeah. There's a screaming need for authenticity here. And it's lacking. It's lacking so deeply and profoundly. I mean, it's heartbreaking to me. The quality that's available that isn't accessed because it's not focused on. It's not praised. Yeah. If you're at school, you get the girls if you're a jock. Yeah. Not if you're a nerd or a poet, for God's sake. I mean, it's changing. I don't even know if poetry is taught anymore.
But it's still, while that might not be totally accurate, it's still the image of poet that people are looking for. It's the image of nerd. It's not just being who you are. It's an image, and I think you put it well when you say that you become, or you have to identify yourself as marketable.
Yes.
So even when you see pluralistic advertising where they're marketing to the nerd, or they're marketing to the jock, or they're marketing to the yogini, or they're marketing to, you know, whatever
the black
it is,
person or the Mexican,
whatever it is, it's still that we find ourselves having to build and construct our identities, our values, who we are, based on whether or not we fit into one of these compartments.
Correct.
And one of the most beautiful ways that I've heard postmodernism described is that it's the situation where you go into the grocery store and you see that there are 25 different face creams that you can buy, and you think, God, the options are endless. And this is postmodernism as it relates to consumerism. But not buying a face cream is not an option.
That's right.
So it's that sort of same feeling of having the illusion of choice, or the illusion of individualism, the illusion of identity that is unique, when really it's all about boxing oneself in.
Correct. Absolutely. And you see that too with the incredible cult of celebrity and the incredible cult of around wealth. You know, people get, like Donald Trump gets to be incredibly famous just because he's wealthy. Yeah, I don't know whether Donald Trump's a great guy or a total whatever. Thank you. I have no idea. Yeah, because I don't watch his interviews because he's there because he's rich. You know, thank you. So what? You know, interesting story once every 10 years, but to make him a celebrity, to millions of people to aspire to wealth for wealth's sake. I'm not against wealth, be clear about that. Yeah. But to project wealth as an end in itself is another big lie. Yeah. I lived in Aspen for years, and it's full of miserable millionaires who bought the big lie, made their millions, and they're still not happy, and they're sitting around going, now what? Yeah. So they go off and do personal growth if they're lucky.
Okay, so we've talked about this culture of consumerism. We've talked about how it, found itself as a core element in the American paradigm. We've talked about different ways that it touches how we live. We've talked about how, sort of indirectly, it reinforces segregation on many levels and perpetuates the illusion of individualism.
Yes.
So there are all kinds of different ways in which this affects how we live and essentially pulls us from ourselves, making it so that we are constantly trying to grasp for betterness. We are constantly trying to find value and, essentially filling a black hole with crap. So what can we do about it?
I think the first thing is to I often use a phrase that if you're born in a brown paper bag and grow up in a brown paper bag, you know the sky is brown. And the daring challenge and the courageous challenge is to tear the paper bag and see if there's something outside. So to challenge your own assumptions, to challenge your own to question the rules and guidelines and all that we're talking about is a starting place.
The one piece of practicality that I would have to bring in there is, the first step has to be recognizing you live in a brown paper bag, which I think most people are unaware of.
Oh, totally.
They think the sky is brown, not because the bag is brown, but because that's the sky to them. Yeah. And I need to add here that even that's perpetual, or there's a great energy perpetuated against that, where Americans are constantly being told that they're the best country in the world, they've got all the answers, no one else has got anything to teach. That's true.
No one's figured anything. Thank you. But that you could turn on the TV now, and within 2 hours, someone will say something to that effect, that every system is Americans are the best. Not only are they the best, their lives are worth more than non-Americans, and Americans are people, and anyone who's not an American is an alien. On top of that, there's this cultural thing that just shocked me when I learned about it, which is, in this culture, if you ask questions, you are seen to be stupid. You should already know. In every other country I've ever been in the world, if you ask questions, you're seen to be really smart. Because asking questions indicates that you're seeking more knowledge, and you have to be smart to seek more knowledge. Yeah? So you're right, question the brown paper bag, but understand there's this huge cultural pressure to not do that.
Oh, that's my whole point.
Yes.
I mean, that's sort of the tragedy of the condition, is
Yes.
that, you know, whatever it is, the culture, public education, with our government, you know, even the idea of the nuclear family.
Yeah.
It's all about
We're
keeping
right.
things contained
Yep.
and painting a reality that is unquestionable.
Yes, and keeping people afraid and separated. Yeah.
So how do we wake up?